Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again. I'm going to talk now about The Flash and following the recent announcement that the actor Hartley Sawyer, who played the character Ralph Digby, known as the elongated man from the show, has been sacked. Now this is following tweets that had surfaced online a while back and had made serious references against, racist, sexual assault and very homophobic language alike on here. This were an issue that had kind of come to the fore a couple of weeks ago and they were kind of simmering, but now it's really come to the forefront of recent news and the CW have taken the decision to release him from the show. Now these were tweets that were made back from 2012 and 2014, long before Sawyer had joined the show, which was 2 years ago. He's been on it now for the last couple of seasons now, and he's developed quite a good rapport and following with fans alike, but the tweets had kind of resurfaced and circulated again. Despite the fact that he had deleted his Twitter, he has since apologised on his Instagram and other social media alike on here, but as we know, once the tweets go out, it's kind of too late. It kind of spreads around very quickly and everybody knew about it, and the CW has taken a swift decision on here. The executive producer of the show, Eric Wallace, made a statement online essentially saying that he was very mad as hell about the tweets and that the CW, they do not tolerate any kind of derogatory remarks regarding race, ethnicity or national origin, and that the tweets broke his heart. So that's the kind of current events that were leading on it. So a couple more thoughts on here. So regarding the tweets, now as harsh as this may sound, I never really sympathise with anybody, whether they're a public celebrity or not, regarding sending tweets on here. So the reason I say that is because when you send a tweet, there's a thought process in terms of you think about what you're going to say and then you type out the tweet and then you add whatever video or GIF or image and then you press tweet. Now, throughout those stages, there's a thought process that which you should evaluate and review what you're going to tweet, how it's going to affect you, and what potential significance those words from the tweet are going to have in the current kind of social media sphere that we all live in. We all know now we're in a very hypersensitive culture nowadays where you can build up a career or a certain image over years and years and years, and all that can be destroyed over one single tweet. We've seen it in the past, various examples of Roseanne Barr, the actress from the very famous show Roseanne back in the day. There were plans to kind of revive the show going forward, but due to her making a kind of racist tweet on here, they cancelled the show and the plans to revive it. We had Kevin Hart, the comedian, of course, was due to host the Oscars from 2019, but again, certain homophobic tweets had resurfaced online and he was forced to kind of resign from his position. And the most famous example of all within recent times was, of course, the director James Gunn, who made the two Guardians of the Galaxy movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Very successful, very prominent, all the characters that we know from those films. He was originally set to direct the third movie, and then all of these tweets and statements resurfaced online that he had made. He was sacked by Disney, and then later on he was reinstated very controversially, and as far as we know, he is now back on to direct the third movie. So this isn't the first time when we talk about Hartley Sawyer in terms of celebrities having what they've tweeted from the past come back to basically bite them in their current career. So I think whether you're a celebrity or whether you're not a celebrity, you always have to be mindful and careful of what you put out on a tweet. First of all, you need to think of why you're putting that tweet out there. You know, when we look at all of the examples that I've mentioned before, particularly when we concern Hartley Sawyer, and yes, I've seen a couple of examples of all the tweets on there, and yes, they are some of which I think maybe aren't as bad as what people made out, but there are others involved that, yes, I can completely understand why people have taken issue with them. I'm not going to repeat them on this video here, but if you go online and Twitter and you do a bit of digging and searching, you'll be able to see that many people have taken screenshots of the tweets that he put out there. So I always think, what goes through your head, what goes through your mind when you decide to tweet out something of a certain nature, whether it's racist or homophobic or any kind of tasteless nature? What goes through your head? Now, a lot of people have said, well, when he tweeted them back in the day, they were meant more in jest. They were in terms of more humorous, or him trying to be more humorous. There was no kind of vicious attacks towards any celebrity or anyone in particular. He wasn't targeting any kind of particular demographic when he put out these tweets. And from the tweets that I've seen, I guess you can come to that assumption. But again, I'll go back to my original point. Why put the tweet out in the first place? Like, what goes through your head? The process you go from thinking what you're going to tweet to pressing tweet, that's when you should stop and think, right, what is the impact that sending out this tweet has had? So, as heartless as it sounds, I can't really sympathise with him. You know, I know people have different kind of senses of humour and tolerance levels, and some people accept things a lot more than others. But at the end of the day, you know, as an individual, what age, whether you're 20 years old, 30 years old, 50 years old, you know that when you send out that tweet, that some people are going to find that offensive. And particularly him, you know, as an actor. Now, okay, maybe he wasn't as prominent back in 2012 as what he is now, but still, you know, you always should have the sense to realise from a career perspective, if I put something online, it's out there. You know, it may not resurface currently, but 5 years, 10 years from now, someone is going to do enough digging and bring it back up again. So you have to be conscious of that as a public celebrity, okay, as an actor. The second point I want to raise is that why have these tweets surfaced now? Okay, he made them 7 years ago. So when he was casted for the role as Ragdigme, you would have looked to assume that the CW, when the casting department, would have done their background checks and their research to check up on any kind of notorious or controversial incidents that the actor had been involved with prior to him casted. You know, it's the same in any normal walk of life. When you employ someone, you do background and reference checks, okay? So why wasn't the same process followed here? Why wasn't it a case of they did their background checks and found out about the tweets then? Why is it only suddenly resurfaced now? Because prior to this incident here, as far as I know, I didn't hear any kind of bad words or bad incidents about Hartley Sawyer as an actor. There seemed to be a very good rapport. If you watch all the interviews and behind the scenes with the cast of the show, I never saw any reports of any bad behaviour or bad blood between the actors on here. I do know, of course, that any TV production or television series, if there are issues, they will always try to keep them behind closed doors. I appreciate, of course, that no show ever runs completely smoothly. Again, it's like any line of work that you follow, when there are going to be disagreements and conflicts within everybody involved. But as far as I heard, there was nothing involving Hartley Sawyer, and he seemed quite a genuinely likeable person. And as I mentioned before, he had a very good fan following and rapport with the fans. So you do wonder, why is it all of a sudden someone has taken the time? Because obviously an individual has persisted to go back through his tweets, and they were 2012, so you'd assume he's posted quite a significant amount of tweets since then, but someone has since taken the time to kind of filter through all of his social media and dig up these tweets that he sent out in the past. So has there something else gone on in the background? Has he kind of upset someone who's kind of higher up in the hierarchy within the studio or entertainment business, and they've decided to get him back? You know, has there been a case where someone's heard about him disagreeing with another actor who has a certain fan following, and that fan following is then taking their time to go through and dig up all these tweets on here? So conspiracy theory perhaps, but I just think there's more to this, because it's always suspicious when you hear nothing and then all of a sudden everything comes to the forefront. There has to be a trigger, there has to be much more of a cause as to why these tweets have all of a sudden surfaced online. So maybe we'll hear about it in the future as this develops onwards. We might see a few more kind of quotes and clips. Maybe 6 months to a year further down the line, Hartley Sawyer may reveal more details afterwards as what's gone on behind the scenes. So that's what we would like to wait and see on here. So the third issue I want to go on to now is, should he have been sacked? Now, of course, when you read the nature of the tweets, you have to understand the CW, it is a television network and it is a brand, it is a franchise, and as we know, any brand or franchise has got a certain amount of affiliates and sponsors who care very much about the image of that brand or the products that they put out there. of course, but whether they market or sell, because they know that any potential damage to their image could potentially damage sales or merchandise, which could ultimately damage any profit that they make. Okay, so obviously from a professional point of view, you can completely understand their position. They don't want any kind of ties to kind of any controversial tweets that could be seen as racist or misogynist or homophobic that damages their brand, which they could feel damages their viewership. So on the one hand, you can completely understand why they've decided to sack Hartley on here. And of course, as I mentioned before, we're in a hypersensitive PC culture anyway, and that's kind of tripled down with the current scenarios going on with the George Floyd incident and the current protests and looters, and the whole issue with racism and police brutality has resurfaced again. So that's going to make any kind of studio even more anxious about any potential indiscretions that could be seen as kind of racist or misogynist. They're going to stamp that out straight away. So from that perspective, I can completely understand why they did this. But we could be pragmatic and at the end of the day look at it and say it's tweets. Hartley hasn't committed a crime. He hasn't been caught drug dealing, or this is not sexual assault. There's no physical assault on here. At the end of the day, when you look at the tweets, they were on his own profile. I could understand more if they were aimed at a particular person and there was examples of a personal attack in terms of social media. I could understand that more. But these are more him on his own profile. Okay, and at the end of the day, it's a tweet. It's not, you either read it or you don't. It's not physically impacting anybody, and they were from way back, from 6-7 years ago. So is this a case of, could he have been suspended from the show and then maybe come back a year later, perhaps? Now, I always think when we talk about tweets, I think a suspension, it depends on the nature of the tweets, but I think a suspension is perhaps more of an appropriate punishment to go on. But of course, when we talk about the dynamic of the show, that would probably be more difficult, because in the current timeline of the show now, Ralph Digby is very much a prominent character of the Team Flash. And if we look at the recent storylines within season 6, spoilers if you haven't seen season 6 of The Flash, but we know that Ralph has recently embarked on a kind of relationship with Sue, a new character that was introduced, and it's very much of a narrative going on where he has to protect Sue from a kind of undercover plan to hurt her parents, and it looks like Sue would be a much more of a permanent fixture for season 7, and they will look to build on the relationship with Ralph on there. So it'd be difficult then for the writers to kind of write him out the show for a year if he were suspended and then have him come back again. So it'd be a bit more of a burden and a bit more of adjustment of fans to make that change from watching him on the show. So if we go on now in regards of the show, what are the options they can do? Well, option 1, of course, is they could simply recast the actor in a different role. Okay, actors may find it a bit disorientating making that adjustment from a different actor, but this news is out there now, so they fully understand why the decision has been made. So after a couple of episodes, and again, as with the Ruby Rose Batwoman news, if the actor is good enough and can make a substantial impact, then over time fans would go over it and they could just continue on. Option 2, of course, is that it can somehow find a way to kind of write Ralph out of the show or potentially kill him off. I don't think they would kill him off screen. CW doesn't really kill off a lot of their main characters who are the kind of protagonists of the show. They don't tend to do that a lot. So I don't think they will kill him off. They could introduce a storyline where basically Sue got in more trouble, had to kind of hide away, leave the country for a while, and Ralph decided to go with her and protect her, and they could have a couple of scenes where they mention that and then just leave it at that. I mentioned in my season reviews, I do think there are too many members of Team Flash on the show, too many superheroes, and I think they need to cut down the numbers of that. So I wouldn't be too disappointed if they took that approach of just writing him out and saying he disappeared or he's had to protect Sue for a year or two. I think that's the best way they could work around it. It wouldn't need too much of an explanation. We've seen throughout the show characters that come and go away on hiatus all the time. So I don't think that would be too much an issue if they decided to take that route. That would probably be the less complicated and the easiest way to go with the show. So that's what I think they should do. But again, it just raises the issue again. People are going to bring up a lot the topic of cancel culture. Are we going too far? The fact that people, they do things, say things from years and years and years ago. Are we right to kind of put them bang to rights over stuff they do 6, 7, 8 years ago? We all make mistakes. We all say things we shouldn't do. We all post things or send emails that are inappropriate at times. And should we really be punished, or should he really be punished for that? All I can say is, this is again another lesson to anybody, whether you are a celebrity or you're not a celebrity, to always think about what you tweet, always think about what you post online, always think about any Instagram content that you put out there, any YouTube content you put out there before you press tweet or upload or send. Always review and go back over what you're saying, why you're saying it, and think about the impact of what you're going to say and how that's going to influence you as a personality, as an actor, as a celebrity. I think that's the biggest lesson on here. Again, there's no reason why he should have put out those tweets in the first place. You read them and you think, what was really going on through your head? People will say, okay, he was young and irresponsible, fair enough. But for me still, I just don't understand the nature of putting something out there at the time, and again, as a celebrity, you have to realize that these things will always come and bite you later on. It's particularly if your career manages to become more successful in the future. So those are my overall thoughts on it. I just think, again, I can completely understand why he was sacked. I personally feel when we get situations like this, depending on the nature of the tweets, I think more of a suspension. I understand that it's a bit more difficult if you're talking about an actor on a show or somebody who's going to present an award ceremony or somebody who's going to direct a movie. I know each situation has to be taken on its own merit, but I generally feel, especially when they range from years ago, I think it's just better to kind of suspend someone more than rather than to sack them. But I know people will have different views and opinions on that. So those are my thoughts for now, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with his sacking, or do you think that he should have been suspended and that this is something that would have blown over? There would have been something else to talk about within the social media news, and have the CW overreacted, or do you think this was the right decision for them to make? So let me know in the comments what you believe. But those are my thoughts on Hartley Sawyer getting sacked from The Flash. Let me know what you think. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.